I'm Billy S, welcome back to the channel. Apologies for the echoey voice today. I'm in a new apartment, we do not have furniture. Until then, this is how it's gonna sound. Today we're looking up and down as we rank my top 10 vertical levels in Soulsborne. Now what do I mean by a vertical level? Simple, I'm looking for areas that primarily focus on traversing vertically, either upwards, downwards, or both. And that's important because you can argue that areas like Stormvale Castle have a ton of vertical level design, which is true, but they also have a lot of horizontal level design to balance it out, which takes it away from the specific niche I'm looking for in this video. You're often at the mercy of gravity if you're not careful in these levels. Perhaps you'll get confused by an area having multiple floors. As long as the level design encourages upwards or downwards traversal, it fits this list. Honourable mention goes to the Dreg Heap from Dark Souls 3, by the way. It's not my favourite area by a long shot, but I really respect the commitment to the verticality here. And it's rather telling that it loses all its momentum once you reach the Earthen Peak Ruins, which is a more flat, horizontal-based zone to explore. So be sure to parry that subscribe button to help out the channel, and let's get into it. My top 10 vertical levels in Soulsborne, ranked. Let me know your favourites down below. At number 10, we have Blighttown from Dark Souls. A controversial pick, no matter the times it's brought up, I've always had a strong fondness for Blighttown's level design. While a part of me did want to put the Depraved Chasm from Demon Souls on here for being a more tight variation of what makes Blighttown's verticality so interesting, I can't deny that Blighttown added a lot more to the formula to make it more memorable for the average player and difficult. Ignoring the awful frame rates that ruined people's perception of the zone for half of the game's life cycle, the use of verticality here is fantastic. Either entrance sees you descending ladders and crossing rickety wooden platforms to progress, and the enemy encounters are designed to challenge your spatial awareness lest you fall into the void below. You have infested barbarians and ghouls attempting to ambush you at every opportunity, whilst past the first bonfire are some flaming attack dogs waiting to surprise you. Then you've got the non-respawning toxic dart blowers who add a nice element of challenge to navigation, as you're not only trying to progress through the level, but also find your way up to their platforms so you can slay them and make potential runbacks simpler. Then, as you get closer to the swamp's floor, you've got mosquitoes rising up to greet you, alongside those fiery chaos bugs who act as a nice extra challenge. The amount of optional gear to find across perilous walkways from both parts of Blighttown is staggering, including the hidden Firekeeper soul in Dartblower Firedog Hell, and the amount of care that went into the design of this locale blows my mind. All that's missing is a shortcut from above the water wheel elevator to the first half of the area, and we'd be cooking with gas. The swamp has no bearing on this video topic since it ditches the verticality for a flat expanse of hellish poison, but it's the descent that made Blighttown so famous anyway, so what's the problem? At number 9, we have the High Wall of Lothric from Dark Souls 3. I debated for a while whether to actually include this area on this list, as it's the least vertical location in today's video, and yet you're descending a wall, going down castle towers, across ramparts, down rooftops into the streets, trying to reach the lowest point where the gatehouse rests. In that sense, I think it fits the theme, though because there could be some debate, number 9 is a fair spot. Starting on the ramparts, you have to make your way down various stairwells through different towers, even avoiding a massive dragon encounter to reach the mid-level bonfire. From there, it's downwards, as you either climb down a tower to free Grey Rat, or you head down the rooftops to reach the buildings sloping into the city streets. It's very easy to accidentally roll off of a roof and take a lot of fall damage if you're not careful, and we've got the classic vertical level design of tons of ladders to make getting down a little bit easier. There are two distinct pathways to reach the main promenade leading to the lower gate, either by going down a ladder into the nearby plaza, or going through the building with the spear-wielding Lothric Knight to find an Estus Shard and the Cell Key, before then dropping into the same plaza. The shortcut back to the first bonfire is a large vertical elevator shaft that highlights the prominence of how far you've come, and even the pathway down to Vort's boss arena is a large stairway that keeps you going downwards and downwards. It's one of my favourite opening levels in Soulsborne, and I think the high wall has gotten its due praise over the years for its interesting level design and snappy, yet concise difficulty curve. Good on ya! At number 8, we have the Specimen Storehouse from Elden Ring: Shadow of the Erdtree. A sub-area of the Shadowkeep, this is the main bulk of the zone, as you find yourself in this giant storage space with over a dozen floors leading up into the sky. Your goal is to reach the top so you can face down Messmer, but that requires a lot of work. It's a fusion of the level design found in the research hall from Bloodborne and the Grand Archives from Dark Souls 3, but I don't think it quite reaches the same heights as those locations for a couple of reasons. While I love the vastness of the area and just how many nooks and crannies there are to find within each floor, the actual visual design is very samey, and it lends to this maze-like sensation where you're not actually sure where you are at any given moment. You need to reach this lever, which raises the central pillar of the storehouse, allowing you to parkour up to Messmer's boss arena, but depending on how you enter, you may run into a small problem. See, exploring from the gatehouse entrance first will allow you to reach the top floors no problem, with a lot of exploration to deal with, imps and fire knights to contend with, and items to find. But if, after pulling the lever, you die without getting the Grace near Freya, you're locked out of getting back up to that floor, with the only way back being through the church district entrance. Ooh, small oversight. It happened to my partner while he explored the lower part of the area, and I can't help thinking that's a bit of bad design. I love the upper loft you can find via a hole in the wall before the drop down to the lever, which has some precarious vertical platforming and a few fun puzzles for items, and any moment where you get to step outside is a breath of fresh air, leading to some fun side paths needed to find the secret rite to progress Ansbach's questline. I always felt like I was discovering something new with every corner I turned, and that's the hallmark of a fun level. It's got design flaws, and I feel it takes a little too much from the areas that inspired it in past games, but still feels enthralling to explore. At number 7, we have Senpo Temple, Mount Kongo, from Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. Despite being a game of a lot of verticality due to the grapple mechanic, a lot of the levels are focused on forward progression as opposed to upwards or downwards progression. Senpo Temple, due to it being a mountain, always has a sense of upwards momentum though. From the very start, you're racing up forest hills, climbing through trees, and into the rafters of nearby temples. And once in the lower courtyard, the entire portion of the zone leading up to the Armored Warrior is pure vertical perfection, as the bridge leading up to the mountain is broken, forcing you to take an alternative route. Grappling across cliff sides, shimmying over ledges, avoiding dangerous attacks from the Hat Soldiers, there's a sense that any wrong move will see you fall into the void, and that's exactly what I wanted. Bonus points when you do the optional parkour to reach extra story-related items, which involves a few leaps of faith. The second half of the zone, while a lot more open than what we just went through, still focuses on the player needing to make their way further up the mountain. You grapple over more rooftops, you can take some roads downwards towards some optional encounters, including one lower building hiding a long-armed centipede encounter, as well as the road leading back down to the broken bridge you saw earlier. The enemies here are also engaging and unique, which is a fresh change of pace after the first few zones had fairly basic encounters outside of the mini-bosses, all leading to a great rush for the final Sculptor's Idol before the boss. With a stellar visual design and the ability to always look back and see where you came from in the zone, you get a real sense of verticality and progression, which is exactly what I want from a level like this. At number 6, we have the Prison of Hope from Demon Souls. 3-1 was From Software's first smash hit when it came to vertical level design, but the way it plays out is entirely unique to the rest of the series, as they took a survival horror approach to every scenario. You start in a prison cell and you're locked in a very small area of the complex, the aim being to find various keys that slowly allow you to explore further and further until you're running a full jailbreak scenario as you wind your way out to the nearby church and the boss. You can see the different floors as you look out from the railings, knowing you'll be able to explore most of them. There are gaps in the floor you might accidentally stumble down if you're not careful, a host of stairways and corridors to navigate, all the while avoiding some of the most persistent jailers in the series. The Mind Flayers may seem relatively tame by today's standards, but for 2009, their ability to paralyze the player and their powerful magic attacks made them forces to be reckoned with. The atmosphere here is perfection, and as you descend the prison, things slowly get more fucked up, with an amalgamation appearing on the bottom level. Then there's the bridge with a giant ballista that forces you to take a different route if you're not confident in your dodging abilities, which has you exploring more levels to reach the guard corridors, leading to the employee exit out of the prison. Even at the end, you're encouraged to clamber up some more towers and staircases to reach a hollow who revives the area boss if you don't kill him. The prison is always forcing you to be aware of your surroundings above and below, so you'll eventually escape and come out on top. And I love it. There's not as much risk of gravity-defying deaths in the Prison of Hope, but it's the one level where you wish you could have a mini-map so you could check where the locked doors were, where you've been, and where you're aiming to reach. I've got no negatives to say, I just think the next 5 levels in the video fit today's theme a tad bit more. As we continue to climb up to the vertical level champion, let me take a moment of your time because I am trying to reach 30,000 subscribers on this channel by the end of the year. It's a little bit out of sight, but I honestly think we can make it, and if you want to help support the channel, consider parrying that subscribe button right there to stay up to date on all of my future videos. My social medias will be- no, that's wrong. No, what I wanted to say was, you can become a channel member. It's $4.99 a month. It gives you early access to future videos. It gives you a shout out in the description and at the end of videos as well. And very soon, very soon after we're set up in our new apartment, I'll finally be able to start putting out some special members only content. So it's definitely worth that $4.99. Back to the regularly scheduled vertical programming. At number 5, we have Ashina Castle from Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. While I do love Senpo Temple, there's no denying that the vertical king of Sekiro is Ashina Castle. You revisit this location 3 different times across the game, and each time you're either ascending or descending to reach your objectives. The first time you arrive, you're forced to parkour along the rooftops, avoiding Nightjar soldiers, including everybody's favourite cannonball, until you reach the inner dojo. You can explore the lower city for some extra items and a mini-boss battle at the top of the castle steps, but nothing beats grappling along buildings to get inside. Once in, you can either progress through the dojo, stealth killing the Ashina elites until you reach the sculptor's idol above, or you can descend into the lowest room of the castle to unlock the back and front gates, giving you access to an entirely different part of the region. You can find Black Hat Badger in this area, as well as a host of soldiers working to restore the bridge back to the outskirts. Then, atop Ashina Castle, we have some of the best boss fights in the series. On the second visit, we have to climb to the top of the castle once more, except our idols have been deactivated, and we have to descend into the castle moat to breach the inner walls, before following the Interior Ministry's wooden bridges up to the castle proper. On the third visit though, we do the opposite, going from Kuro's room at the top of the castle all the way down to the reservoir entrance, following flames and grappling as we go. There's always a lot of extra content from mini-bosses to find, a hidden headless in the lake out back, and it all winds together to create an exceptionally cohesive and memorable area. I can remember Ashina Castle's layout perfectly despite the verticality and the vast nature of the lower city. But it lands at number 5 because, for me, Sekiro has an inherent advantage in this video category, the grappling hook, and I think the following areas from the Soulsborne series are more impressive because they didn't have that gimmick that perfectly pairs with the topic, but that's also completely subjective from my part. At number 4, we have Sen's Fortress from Dark Souls. One of the most infamous locations on this list, the gut reaction is for people to say it's a bad area because it's hard and isn't afraid to troll the player every now and then. It's easily the most Kingsfield of Dark Souls areas, and it's not even close. But every trap and every obstacle has such purposeful placement that I can only respect it. I've made the joke before, it's like getting through a Takeshi's Castle course. You've got deadly axes over narrow walkways with enemies slowly approaching you or firing at you from range, massive boulder traps that can and will knock you down, taking massive chunks of your health if not careful, pressure plates that let off arrow traps which can decimate you if your reaction speed isn't fast enough to roll through them, firebomb throwing giants on the rooftops who can surprise players catching a breather even if the scorched, singed stones are meant to be an environmental hint. The main shortcut for this zone, assuming you don't find the hilariously well-hidden bonfire, involves you doing an extremely finicky jump to a different spire to get a key which unlocks a lift that leaves you in the middle of the axe walkway from earlier. There are multiple hidden items you can only get by dropping down various gaps and going through hidden windows, encouraging exploration. There's an elevator that purposefully tries to kill you, and we even get our first mimic encounter that many players won't expect if they don't know about them. All wrapped in some of the tightest level design I have played. I can see the map through this dungeon in my mind because it's so well laid out. Every path makes sense. You can reach every room of the complex, and while a brutal journey from start to finish, the pacing of the dungeon feels relatively well designed. Assuming you don't die right before reaching the rooftops, otherwise you might scream a few times. But hey, we're in a trap-laden nightmare fortress, that's part of the charm, baby. At number 3, we have the Research Hall from Bloodborne: The Old Hunters. For long-term viewers, this may come as a surprise, as I've actually been rather harsh to the Research Hall in my past videos. It's because I don't really enjoy the hospital patients who make up the majority of the enemies here. They've got insane stagger potential and can decimate your health bar in a single flurry combo if you're not careful, which can be frustrating in an area that relies on you making slow but steady progress to complete it. However, take away those irritating bloated creatures and the level design itself is stellar. The Research Hall is a vertical maze where going up one staircase could take you to multiple different rooms, each of which will lead you to entirely different locations. There are a host of shortcuts to discover to make your journey a little more bearable, but they require you to make good headway into the level to access. I love how there's so many different rooms to explore, some with a few items, others progressing upwards, some of them are dark, you're always finding something new. There's the hidden lumen flower garden outside that you can unlock late into the zone, which is a nice throwback to the main game, and the entire facility changes once you reach the rafters above and pull the lever to move the staircases. Suddenly, you're able to reach entirely new areas, including the boss door, which gives you another opportunity to explore from the ground up to discover more items, enemies, and challenges. There's even a hunter you can fight near the end who I always enjoy jousting with. And the machine gun wheelchair man, while a little annoying if he actually hits you, is still a funny obstacle that gives the Research Hall a real charm to it. The area is dripping in atmosphere, and every room feels like stumbling into monstrosities of the church. There's even Adelaide's questline that has you exploring the whole area for brain juice, which is about as disgusting as it sounds. If it wasn't for the enemies just not clicking with me, the level design would have boosted this to my number 2 spot, but the bronze medal ain't that bad. At number 2, we have the Grand Archives found in Dark Souls 3. This ancient library is a sprawling complex that you have to ascend through if you wish to reach the bridge leading to the Twin Princes. From the ground floor, where you're harassed by a crystal sage and some imps, and introduced to the mechanics of waxing your head, to the darkened rooms you progress through with ghost hands crawling out of every bookshelf to curse you should your wax melt off. You've got multiple floors to explore, each with their own dangers to fight off and items to collect. There's a lot of parkouring down gaps to land on bookshelves with items, or dropping down onto a bridge to reach the next spot of progress. There are hidden rooms you can discover and helpful shortcuts throughout to keep the tediousness down, and then you get to the outside section where you get to clamber along the rooftops fighting dangerous gargoyles as you try to figure out which way leads you further up the building. I love how there's a nice split of inside and outside portions to this level, with multiple different paths you can take as the player. The discount gank squad waits by the start of the bridge to the boss, which, once you fight through, unlocks a shortcut back to the original bonfire, and you can climb further up onto the roof to fight against the strongest winged knights in the game, and even drop back into the building to find a cage that once contained Gertrude. While it's not as vertical as the research hall, I find the overall theming and enemy package to be far more appealing personally. The library is a maze of twisted turning bookcases, hidden rooms, levers, cursed creatures, waxed heads, but with the duality of the outside areas like the rooftops and the bridge leading to Lorien and Lothric, which is also about climbing to the highest point of Lothric Castle. It all comes together to create a real memorable experience, and thank God, because this game has Irithyll Dungeon, one of the worst vertical levels in the series. There's just one location that I think nails the vertical level design more to an absolute T. At number 1, we have Broom Tower from Dark Souls 2. One word, Castlevania. Broom Tower is a Castlevania level that somehow found its way into the Soulsborne series, and it is utter perfection from a level design standpoint. You start at the very top, clambering along a giant chain until you find the first idol of Nidalia, and then you have to descend through the entire complex to reach the Fume Knight at the bottom. What I like is that you always have a sense of progression as you attempt to figure out how to make your way down each floor. You've got parkouring down treacherous terrain, you've got tough enemy encounters that can knock you off into the void if you're not careful, you have both inner and outer environments, so whether you're taking on creatures while avoiding fire traps and bombs, or outside getting ambushed by knights bursting out from the ash, you've always got something going on. I love the areas with the crumbling floors where you have to keep dropping down past various enemies to progress, as it leaves you disoriented and has you relying more on your senses to survive. I love the halfway point of the level and how it has you going to an entirely different side tower to collect the heated metal rod so you can activate the main tower's mechanisms, which has you avoiding some unique crawling type enemies who can explode if they get too close to you. It takes a dip into the horror, and I really like that. There's the memorable invaders, like the one who tries to run away from you, so you get ambushed by a host of enemies and another idol of Nidalia, as well as the invaders who attack you as a gank, which is just so funny. And I've gotta say, the hunt for Nidalia's different shards is one of the best parts of the DLC. You have to search every area, such as going through hallways filled with traps, or going through side corridors where her idol is behind a series of doors you have to search through. You can find the armor of Sir Elon, which allows you to access his boss fight up an elevator if you look around enough, and of course you have the lower part of the level where the enemies become a bit more ghost-like and the flames turn to cold ash as you reach the Fume Knight's boss arena. There's just an insane sense of progression that comes from Broom Tower, and it feels like a fully cohesive and impressively self-contained area in a way where I don't think Shulva or Ilium Lois quite reach. Its entire progression is vertical, and I'm dying to see another modern FromSoft location take on the sheer size and scope of Broom Tower, while also bringing enough new to the table that it interests me. It's why, while I love the Specimen Storehouse, it didn't feel like it had that individuality. I could see the Grand Archives / Research Hall influence, while Broom Tower, meanwhile, feels nothing like the rest of the series. And that's why it's my favorite vertical level in Soulsborne. And that's my list. Which vertical levels in Soulsborne are your favorites? Let me know down below, and tell me which of the ones I put on my list shouldn't have been there, because I'm sure some of you have opinions. Be sure to parry that subscribe button to stay up to date on all my future videos, and yeah, that's super cool. My social medias are on screen now, feel free to follow me if you're comfortable. I recommend my Discord or my Twitter or my YouTube community tab, that's the best place to go. A massive shout out to my YouTube channel members for supporting me for another month, you guys are amazing, and I'll see you next time for another video. Adios!